Hi everyone, welcome. I'm down here in my wormery and I've got a couple things laid out here on the bench to feed to my original red wiggler worms. Got some lettuce and some coffee. But there's something different out here. I wonder if you can tell what it is. Well, regulars on my channel will know right away that in the place of this one little shelf that I had out here in front of the window, I've now got this really nice steel shelf, and it's not even in its final form. I'm just trying it on for size. I'm thinking I'm going to probably take one of those 4 shelves and combine it with this 5th shelf over here to come up with another 2 shelf system, sort of like what I have there, which would be static and not on casters, but the one with the 3, after I remove one of them to create the static one, would remain with these casters so it can be moved around. I guess I'm not really set on the final configuration yet, but I figured, hey, why not show the viewing audience that I've now got more room to deploy more systems so that I could break down more and more materials with the worms. So the lettuce that we're feeding today is going to the original red wigglers that are right here, and it's been 12 days since we checked in on these little guys. They're 87 days in service now. That last feeding was number 8, so the lettuce going in today is going to be feeding number 9. So I'm going to put on a glove, get the systems out on the bench, and we're going to get them fed. So let's get started. So now my choice of foods to give them today was not by accident. I was watching the videos. I went back a few check-ins just to get a recap of the things that they've been getting, because I noticed that we kept running into leftovers. So, and I do believe that some of the stuff that we fed them last time, such as banana peel and the peels of some citrus, are probably still going to remain in here as leftovers. So my idea was to give them something that can finally be consumed in one feeding interval, and the lettuce is just the stuff to fit that bill, because lettuce just does not last whatsoever. So it does seem like the feeding zone indicators are lasting, but as you saw, we've got a couple days of coffee as well as a couple extra coffee filters that could be deployed as replacement feeding zone indicators. So I believe that the best bet for an old feeding zone indicator is down in the feeding zone to accompany the yummy foods that they're getting. So let's dig in. So let's see. From the last feeding, I expect that we'll probably see leftover banana peel and citrus peel. The feeding that came prior to that was a bunch of pepper. And last time we came in here, we found not only the skins of the pepper, but I think some of the pepper even showed up as still being adhering to the skin. So I think right here we probably have, no, this to me looks like apple peel. That too is something that might take a little while. So we'll definitely have leftovers to return down into the feeding zone once we're done here. And I mean, if you want to talk about a slow composting material that's always going to show, not always, but show up as leftovers for a very, very long time, it's the seed of a mango. And I guess technically the seed has been eaten for quite some time now, but the outer husk remains and remains and remains. In the case of this one, it was cut in half, so the other half's over there in bin number 2. So here I'm already starting to see bits and pieces of the banana peel. Very popular, worms all over it. And it's actually going to pieces considerably. It seems like the worms really went to town on that thing. Other things that are likely to show up as leftovers over and over and over again for a very long time are things like pumpkin stems. No surprise with that one. So here I see some, I don't know if it's orange or lime, some sort of a peel. And now we're starting to see leftovers from, so the banana, citrus goes back 1 feeding, 2 feedings was the pepper. 3 feedings goes back to the point when we set up a lasagna style feeding here, which was just throwing in some sheets of cardboard with food bits in between. And the food that was deployed 3 feedings ago with the lasagna setup was cantaloupe melon rinds And I think that those rinds actually had a good bit of melon attached to them still, which has been since stripped clean, but the rinds themselves, paper thin at this point, still remain and will remain a little while longer, but they do seem like they're finally at the point where they're gonna maybe break down at some point soon. I think here we might have the stem of a head of cauliflower or something like that, so ooh, yeah, maybe cabbage. I just suddenly caught a whiff of this object, and it definitely has the smell of cabbage. So that's probably what that is. My idea for bedding today was really just to give them the old feeding zone indicator, maybe just another one of those coffee filters, and then the topper, as far as bedding goes, would just be sort of a sprinkling of leaves on the top surface. This to me feels like one of those systems that might benefit from us backing off on the application of bedding a little bit, just so we don't end up running ourselves into a situation where we've jam-packed the bin full of material, leaving us with insufficient space to do our regular check-ins. I could feel myself running out of space as I stack up materials as we excavate the feeding zone, and it's pretty obvious that this system, and I'm assuming bin number 2 is the same, is clearly jam-packed with plenty of bedding for these little guys. So even though we've been super generous till now on the application of bedding, I think today we're going to back off a little and give them the type of bedding that I really like to add, the leaves sprinkled out on top. So it always seems to me like that's something that very closely simulates the natural environment that worms generally live in out in nature, which is amongst leaf litter, resting out on the surface. So I think we've now created ourselves an adequate space into which today's pretty generous feeding should be able to fit pretty neatly. I just keep spotting little bits of leftover that I keep collecting up, but that certainly isn't important or necessary. So now I think we could step over to bin number 2 and get this system prepped for its feeding as well. In here, you know, I don't think it's going to be much of a surprise in terms of the sort of things we encounter along the way. I've already encountered stuff from 2 feedings ago and 3 feedings ago, and feedings that go way back. This is a little chunk of pumpkin stem, I believe. And since the systems generally get fed in a very similar way, I assume we'll bump into stuff from the last feeding, which would have probably included a banana peel and some citrus peel too. And my prediction is coming true. Here's a pretty good sized piece of pumpkin stem, and yet another one holding up quite nicely. Probably wasn't put in here very long ago. So here, let's see if we can pick up the pace a bit and not be so inquisitive. Piece of mango seed husk, just like we found in bin number 1. And oh, nice little worm party happening down low where there's a good bit of moisture collected. Not too surprising that the worms are enjoying that. And I think I even caught a little hint of cabbage smelling stuff. That I assume probably went in with the last feeding, because I don't recall that being part of the past feedings. In the past feedings it was pretty much peppers only, and then prior to that it had been just cantaloupe melon only. So it was sort of a mix last time. More cabbage, stem. As you can tell, we're pretty diligent in keeping things fair and equal. Not equal, but as equal as I can. The one thing that surprised me a little bit was the banana peel, because I did find the stem of a banana here, but just from the look of it, I would judge that it's probably been in the system for quite some time. I expected it to be more intact, as we found in bin number 1, and you know, I could just be missing it. But I guess there's also that, oh, I was about to say that there's always that possibility that the worms consumed it. So this is kind of what I would expect after 12 days from a banana stem, to still be sort of intact to some degree, but it's always a fair bet that some worm is going to have found its way down into that thing, cashing in on that lovely moisture that's within the stem. A little bit surprising, because you wouldn't expect a banana stem to have all that moisture in it, but it does. And the worms are very good at zeroing in on moisture, especially when it's combined with some yummy fruit. All right, let's get these little guys fed. So I'm going to come in at first with the coffee, but we'll jump over here really quick before I forget and grab the old coffee filters as sort of a nice, well-seasoned foundation onto which today's feeding can be placed. And the coffee is from a few days here. What's coming out of one of these filters is more than just a single day. I sort of combine stuff here, so each of these portions of coffee is a little bit more than I would normally feed. And I would say even the lettuce that they're getting today is somewhat more than I would normally feed. But to me, despite the fact that there's a lot of it here, this to me seems like the sort of stuff that's just not going to last. And you know, before we forget, let's get all the leftovers back in, where all the action and fun is going to be. Let's get that taken care of before I space out and forget. And now we can continue with the addition of the yummy stuff. So I mean, there's other things in here. I see bits of onion, I saw a couple chunks of pepper, but the lion's share of what's in here, yeah, here's even a piece of cucumber. The majority of what's in here is lettuce, and lettuce that has quite clearly gone very, very bad. So I'm going to hang on to these two coffee filters to replace the feeding zone indicators that we already put in. So these two extra ones can also go in as supplementary bedding. A very skimpy application of bedding to accompany the feeding, because the majority of the bedding I intend to deploy is just going to be scattered out on the surface as sort of a top dressing, which will enable us to come back the next time and sort of blend all that stuff right into the bed. And hopefully over time they'll work down some of the, oh, what is this? I guess we've even got some cucumber peel in here. Not too surprising, since we found some bits of cucumber. So let's make sure bin number 2 gets a little taste of that as well. It would be kind of nice to see the level in here recede a little bit, because it does feel like I'm crowded, a little bit crowded in here. And now we can get that feeding zone covered up. A little bit surprising that the material I'm encountering down low over here feels like it could benefit from some moisture. Not dangerous or too bad, I guess, because as I pull it out, I do see worms in this stuff. It just seems like when we excavated the feeding zone in bin number 2, there was just so much moisture down low. I imagine that down low we would find moisture everywhere, but on that far edge away from me in bin number 1 here, it seemed like there was not quite so much. Here it feels a little more damp, and once again worms coming out with each scoop, which in itself is a pretty good sign in my book. And man, oh man, after we kind of aerate and till everything up, it does feel like we've really brought the level in here quite a way up to the rim, close to it. So let's see about getting this check-in completed. So many times I look at the camera and I just check to see how much time has elapsed since I started rolling, and it's Always a little bit of a shock to see how much time I'm spending in these systems. I don't know why, it just feels fun to explore and look around and check out how things are coming along, and even just share my thoughts with you guys. So I do wonder if people are turned off by a very lengthy video. Now look at that, all that moisture down low in here, just like we saw under the feeding zone. It does feel to me almost as if bin number 2 has possibly a little bit more moisture in it than bin number 1, but not enough to really warrant me wanting to come in here to adjust anything or try to compensate for things to get things equal. I think we're in good shape as far as moisture goes. Let's get the feeding zone indicators in place, and then we can come in with my collection of leaves, deploy a little top dressing of lovely dry leaves before we get things covered up here. So let's see how that looks. Making a little bit of a mess here, sending stuff over the rim, and there we go. I don't know, I'm almost doing it from a point of view of aesthetics, because I like the way the leaves look when we eventually get back into the bins. Just makes it look so much more like a natural space that I assume that the worms dig it and appreciate it. Hopefully I'm right about that. And here, seems like the top covering newspaper we deployed is still sort of holding out well enough to be used one more time. But I have a feeling next time we come back in here, these things are going to be ready for a swap out and replacement, and then these two will also be sort of promoted to a more important function of accompanying their feeding down in the feeding zone, and then in its place, or in their place, we could put in some nice replacement top covers. So I've only got a few things left here now before we finish to do. Getting stuff cleaned up, put away, but that stuff's boring. I'm not going to keep you around for that. Really quick before I go, let me just quickly say thank you. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, as always, please don't forget to leave me a quick thumbs up before you go. That's always really appreciated. And if you haven't done so already, please also consider subscribing to the channel. That's very much appreciated as well. All right, everyone, have a great day. Thanks for watching. Bye now.